All right, Tron, welcome to the podcast. Welcome once again on the podcast, the C3 Media, the Cryptocurrency Chat podcast. As I do traditionally with all my guests on the podcast, and this is not your first time, but I'm going to just play the role and just say, hey, this is your first time because there might be a new viewer out there or a new listener out there that is hearing this or watching this for the first time. So I think it's nice to just start fresh and give them everything we can offer about Ravencoin. So, in regards to the first question I want to ask you is this is the icebreaker question. What is your favorite animal?
Favorite animal. I'd have to say right now we have a golden retriever that's just so friendly, so lovable, and so right now I'd have to say our golden retriever named Hana, and named after Ohana, and which means family. So that'd be my choice.
You know what? I think that was actually the same answer you gave last time. I just wanted to test you, make sure you knew that you knew you didn't betray Hana.
It could be the same. It might have changed. Who knows?
All right.
Yeah.
All right, everyone, Cryptonauts all around the world and Ravenites all around the world, thank you for listening to this podcast. We have the legendary Tron Black, founder and lead developer of Ravencoin. Tron Black is located in Salt Lake City, Utah, United States. Tron Black studied at Pepperdine University and University of Utah. Tron Black is a freedom advocate, crypto developer, entrepreneur, and founder of two startups that were sold to publicly traded companies. Tron holds a BS in computer science and a master's of business administration. Since early 2013, Tron has been working in the cryptocurrency space as a miner, developer, investor, and trader. He was one of the first 5 employees of T0 and helped issue the first publicly traded SEC acknowledged parallel crypto equity for Overstock.com and issued the world's first crypto bond offering. He worked for ANX International, a crypto fintech company located in Hong Kong. Tron was a principal developer for Medici Ventures, which invested in a portfolio of blockchain companies including T0, Bankerus, Bit, Votes, Minds, Chainstone Labs, Ripio, Settlement, Vincent, and Spira. Tron has given away cryptocurrencies to hundreds of people in order to increase awareness of how value now moves as easily as email. He's written an article about Bitcoin, Monero, Dash, financial regulations, security tokens or STOs, and Ravencoin, and has been featured on many cryptocurrency podcasts, including this one. He's the inventor on a number of patents in the crypto space and regularly gives talks on cryptocurrency topics worldwide. Tron is currently the president of the Ravencoin Foundation, an advisor to T0, TUSC, WETX, and Relio.fund, Equistart, and supporter of RVN, which is both a top cryptocurrency and a leading crypto asset platform. Welcome, Tron. Welcome to the podcast.
Wow, thank you. That was quite the introduction. There was only I didn't go to Pepperdine, so I'm not sure how that snuck in and where that came from.
Okay.
But all the other stuff seemed pretty close to accurate. So I'm happy to be here. Thank you for having me.
Perfect. All right. So before we continue, Jake, with the disclaimer, please.
Alrighty. We we appreciate everyone participating and viewing and listening to our both to Twitch as well as to YouTube and Anchor when these are released on their recorded platforms. Yet if you are watching via YouTube, which we are going to release this content to, and you probably are looking at me right now, we appreciate a like and a subscribe if you want to continue to hear more stuff. We do podcasts, our news and crypto top 10 every Wednesday and Sunday. But we also do interviews like this one every Thursday. And we're going to be continuing these on in the new year because we've had so much interest. It's very exciting. We also are on our own Discord channel, like many cryptocurrency groups are, kind of like DAOs, but we're not a DAO yet. And we're also on Twitter Live Spaces, which John can help you out with. He does those almost every day now. We're also on Patreon, But you can support us at the $3, $5, and $10 level. And you can also support us via various cryptocurrencies such as Bitcoin, Ethereum, Binance, BAT, and of course, Raven. You can check out all that information in the description below.
And the co-host and guest are not giving financial advice. Keep that in mind. This is all for entertainment purposes only.
Thank you for reminding me.
Yep. No worries.
I skipped right over that thinking of talking about the plug, but yeah.
No worries.
We're none of this is credit.
Yep. Before we continue, Tron. In the white paper, there is an introduction, which Jake's going to read here momentarily. I want you to listen to this. You know obviously what it is, but I want you to listen to it and tell me, where did this inspiration come from to have this intro placed right at the top? Go ahead, Jake.
The intro to the white paper?
Correct.
Which one did you? Oh, wait. Pardon me. Italics. In the fictional world of Westeros, ravens are used as messengers who carry statements of truth. Ravencoin is a use case focused blockchain designed to carry statements of truth about who owns what assets. Would you like me to continue?
Yep. Go ahead, Tron.
Yeah, so that actually came from Bruce Fenton. So he co-wrote the white paper, and he kind of infused the brand and the ravens and the mythology behind the ravens into the white paper, and also added footnotes and things like that. So it was actually kind of a joint effort because I had written a lot of the technical aspects of it, and so we kind of worked together on that. Nice.
Now, when I was reading your introduction, there was something that caught my attention, which was that you wrote articles for it was Bitcoin, Monero, and Dash. What inspired you to write or look into those particular projects, those crypto projects, and write about them?
Yeah, so it was early on, and this would have been probably 2013, 2014, before I went to work for Overstock to work on T0. I was kind of exploring all of the different cryptos, so the top 100 at the time, and what they were and where they came from and how they were built, and what their the ethos was and things like that. And there were certain ones that just resonated with me. And, obviously Bitcoin and then Dash also did. I kind of liked the what do you call it? Mine's blanking.
The blockchain?
What? Not the blockchain, the part where you can have it. You can earn funds from it and
Staking?
you can, what's that?
Staking?
Yeah, we'll call it staking. It actually has a name under Dash. I just can't remember what it was. It's been a while. But you could basically deposit 1,000 Dash, and you could earn rewards for masternodes.
The masternode. Yep.
Masternodes. Yeah, I don't know where I'm right one there. So you create a masternode, set that up. You have 1,000 Dash, and you get basically rewards from that. So it basically is staking, but it powered the masternode network. And then I also really like the thing where you could do a proposal. You get a proposal ID and attach a proposal, and then people who owned 1,000 Dash or ran a masternode would be able to vote on those proposals. And so that they were kind of the first ones to do that. It was a pretty innovative thing, and then and then there was like dozens or hundreds of coins that kind of got copied that idea, and so the idea of a masternode kind of faded. Not faded, but there was just so many of them that I guess the novelty of it for sure faded. And anyway, I like those ideas, and I like the idea where these masternodes could help fund, help fund the core development, help fund the additional things, help do marketing, things like that. And then part of that was that there were projects that I went to where they would give away Dash, and then so I would go to like a park here in Utah, and there would be a booth, and we created someone else did this proposal and created paper wallets with Dash on them, and we could basically just give them away and explain to people that it's Dash, and here, download the wallet. It had instructions on the back and things like that. So I did that, and then I did actually a proposal. I did that for a while, and I actually really enjoyed it, being able to talk to people about cryptocurrency and then give them some at the same time. So I did a proposal that I would give people Dash, so then the blockchain masternode rewarded me Dash, and then I basically gave lots and lots of people. I mean, everybody I met, I would do talks about it, at Overstock and meetups and give away Dash, and so I really enjoyed that. These days I give away Raven.
What about Bitcoin and Monero?
So Bitcoin was the obvious one. I mean, it was the first one I ever purchased. Wouldn't say, it felt late at the time. It was, kind of early 2013, but it felt really late at the time. Because it had been like pennies the year before, and it had run up all the way up to $1, and everybody sold at $1 when it reached $1 and things like that. And then it dropped down and got up to $30. And so I got in. I think it was somewhere in the neighborhood of $50. And so I wanted to buy some, and it was tricky. So I finally found this place called BitInstant, which people probably know was Charlie Shrem's venture, but they had to get cash, and so that was tricky at the time. They had kind of partnered with ZipZap, so you could go down to a Walmart and you could fill out a form, and then you could give them cash, and basically that cash turned into the ZipZap would basically electronically get it over to BitInstant, and then they would send you the funds. And I've told this story actually on Charlie Shrem's podcast as well, but I basically did that, and I was buying, 4 Bitcoin or something. It wasn't a lot, but after I bought it, it never showed up, and I was upset. I mean, like raging, angry kind of thing, like, I've been ripped off, and who's behind this, kind of thing. Anyway, I feel really bad now because I wrote some angry emails, and I probably shouldn't have, but I watched these documentaries about what BitInstant was going through at the time. And it was just an explosion of people trying to get Bitcoin. And so they were just overwhelmed. So anyway, I eventually got it. It just took, days or weeks or something, but I eventually got it. But, I watched in these documentaries where they're just like, just the world's crashing down on this because they just have so much demand. Mm-hmm. And I was just, one small drop in that ocean that was. And
Monero, what about Monero?
Crashing. So Monero, I actually like the spirit of Monero. I do like there is kind of an advantage, I think, to having, privacy of commerce, right? And so while Bitcoin is, originally in the white paper, it was cash, digital cash. Monero is more like digital cash, just because there isn't like this, kind of, it's in Bitcoin, it's as if a piece of yarn goes from every address to every address, from the origination of the original, Bitcoin, when it's mined into existence. There's kind of, it's like there's a tracking piece of yarn between that and every and every address. You can kind of deconstruct all of those network links, and Monero just kind of removes those, uses ring signatures to kind of make that kind of a fuzzy thing instead of a direct connection between addresses.
Yeah, I tried using Monero, and I've done a few transactions on there just to see how the blockchain works, and it's quite fascinating. I do actually like that. But yeah, that's for another topic. So you also mentioned fintech regulations and STOs, and I really want to talk about those too, because I think that's really important, especially what's going on now with, I guess, Congress and governments getting involved in crypto. So I want to ask you, what is your current scope regarding fintech regulations and STOs?
Yeah, so early on, I was introduced to those regulations. First time I ever heard of them was was just a meetup, and we had talked about using like Counterparty and using that as stock. Counterparty was a layer on top of Bitcoin that allow you to create shares on top of Bitcoin, create tokens, much like Ravencoin does, but integrated. And somebody said, "Oh yeah, no, that would potentially run afoul of the SEC laws." And at the time, I had no idea what that meant. It was completely ignorant of them. And so I started looking into them, and then I said, well, this is going to be like an issue or a clash because, there is, kind of this idea of like transferring stuff around and potentially representing that value. So anyway, when I went to work for T0 was building, and well, they actually originally hired the counterparty guys, the guys who were building counterparty, so tokens on top of Bitcoin. And by the time I was hired there, which is just really months later, they had just left, and so we actually used counterparty still to issue bonds. I think the first bond offering, which is basically a bank loan type thing with Overstock, and we built some tracking for being able to track stock borrowing, and we issued some of those on counterparty. But that's where I started learning that the easy part was the technical, right? The programming and the blockchain stuff, that was all easy compared to the legal. And so fast forward another 6 years, and there's not a whole lot more clarity. There's a lot more information out there about it, and there's lawyers that specialize in it now and things like that, but not a ton more clarity. But there's some more clarity, right? For specific things, for something that is a security. Well, really, the ICO thing was the kind of the doing it without the regulation. So ICO is basically STOs without following the regulations. But in the U.S., the SEC basically says if you sell a share of something and there's the expectation of profit and you sell it, and there's people behind in the company that have to be doing something, and then potentially promoting it and things like that. So it hits these 4 Howey tests, and there's some other, I guess, legal tests that they use as well. Farmer, I think, is another one. Then it's potentially a security, and it's not, doesn't make it illegal. It just means you have to follow a set of rules, and some of those rules I think are crazy. I mean, they're if the government's worrying about kind of this gap between the rich and the struggling, the Gini coefficient, that gap between them. They coded it right into the law, right? They basically said, oh yeah, no, if you want to invest in something, you have to be wealthy, and so basically locked people out of like kind of the best investment. So they were never able to take advantage of the investing in things like Uber before it went public, or Amazon before it went public, or a whole bunch of private companies that are not yet public. They were just locked out of it. They don't have a chance. And so, if they're going to point fingers, they need to kind of point fingers at themselves for kind of coding this into the law. They've made one change, which actually I think is really, really, really good, which is they've added an education component to it. That's pretty new. I think it was last year. So you can actually become accredited, which is this, before the education, you could become accredited by having $1 million net worth, but you couldn't count your primary residence, or you had to make $200,000 if you were single, or $300,000 if you're married. And that's a pretty high bar. It may not sound like it to somebody who like lives in New York. Says, oh yeah, a lot of people make that, but most of the rest of the country, in my estimation or research, says most people don't make that, and so it locks out a lot of people. But by adding this education, they added. And I had written an article about this before they did it. I'm not saying I was responsible for it, but I did suggest that if they really want somebody accredited, that it's really what they were saying was, we want somebody who is a sophisticated investor, not just a wealthy person, right? They would allow some 18-year-old trust fund baby to invest that way, but they wouldn't allow somebody who's literally not making a lot of money but is teaching investment in a university, wouldn't be able to invest. And so if they did it via education, they could solve that problem. And so they did. You can now take, I want to say it's the Series 62 or the Series 7, which is tougher. You have to be sponsored. I think there were 3 different tests, but I think the Series 62 is doable. And I don't think you have to be sponsored to do it. So I think that allows people, it's a lot of work, right? And you have to learn a bunch of stuff, but for someone who really wants to do it, that's, I think, a lot more attainable than getting $1 million.
Jake, I think, weren't you looking into this kind of stuff?
Yeah. I think we actually talked about this, Tron and I, initially when I was looking into doing this for my own company, but I can't remember exactly which series he's talking, but he's right about the 60 series. I was studying because you have to take the life insurance exam before they let you do the advisory exams.
Okay.
And yeah, so I actually studied probably about 65% through the class to do that. Anyways, long story short, the reason for this was I was intent on basically, doing securities in blockchain. I run a farm and I also consult. Some of my customers want to know, can I invest in this? Now, of course, it's possible now. You can invest in it. There's Bitcoin futures, hopefully soon to be, spot trading and et cetera, et cetera. But if people want to put money and not have to really so much be tied to blockchain itself, although I think us three would all agree it's better to own than to just sit on the outside, even with the ups and downs. But yeah, as far as doing what you suggested, it is something that it is entirely possible to take those tests. They're not cheap, but if you want to get the license, it's definitely doable.
Yeah. Yep.
Tron, so you've worked for Medici Ventures, right, as the principal
Yep.
software developer. How long?
As a principal software developer, because there were others, so
Okay.
not the, but a.
See,
yeah.
and that's what I wanted to get in regards to Medici Ventures is that I don't really know much about Medici Ventures. Can you paint us a picture of what Medici Ventures is and how large that particular company is? Because I really don't know. So if I don't know, I know that there's a lot of people out there that don't know as well. I've heard of the name circulated in the Ravencoin community, but I don't. There's not. I mean, other than their page that they have, I don't really know much. So if you can just paint us a picture of what Medici Ventures is all about.
Okay, I can paint you a picture of what Medici Ventures was, but not what it is, because it's actually, it's now just a fund, right? So it has no employees. I think at its peak, I'm going to take a guess, I could be wrong, around 80 developers or 80 people. But the main focus of it was to invest in crypto, or rather, let me rephrase that, in blockchain-based companies in specific areas. So voting and land or titling, and I probably won't remember all of the areas, but basically 6 areas that were mostly related to finance and voting. And so they invested, so that was kind of that narrowed the focus to those types of companies. So people would come in and kind of do their pitch, and we invested, I think, in Votes and Votum, so 2 different blockchain voting companies, where the votes would actually be recorded on the blockchain. Should be probably super useful for kind of recent things that went on in this last election, but I think they've been used for various county elections and things like that in different states. Anyway, long story short, the Medici Ventures would invest in these companies, and they would be offered development resources, but for additional equity, so a sort of sweat equity, so additional shares for kind of additional work with blockchain and actually developers and teams that kind of did Scrum and Agile and things like that would help with the development if they needed it. Not every company needed it or wanted it. Some did, and so the companies were kind of built out like that. And then at some point along the way in 2020, so just last year, I guess, mid last year, kind of out of the blue, up until then, Medici Ventures was kind of paying for the team for building Ravencoin, and they said we're gonna shift that out of Medici Ventures and into a foundation. So, what foundation? They said we're gonna help pay for a foundation and to create the foundation and fund it. Not exorbitantly, but with some money to kind of help and transfer the, things that Medici was doing, running nodes and various different things. So that's what happened. So the Ravencoin Foundation was created. It's a 501c6 created out of Wyoming, incorporated in Wyoming. And so it's a nonprofit, and it basically has, access to to AWS servers and Google servers and DigitalOcean servers, and then just kind of manages some keys and things like that. And then about 6 months after that, I got word, kind of at the same time that everybody else did, that they were basically taking Medici and they were not shutting it down. Well, they were shutting down, meaning all the developers were being redeployed elsewhere or finding other jobs, and the entity would be just a financial entity, meaning it would just be a legal entity that held the shares of, I think it's somewhere in the neighborhood of like 18 different companies, blockchain companies. And there was some arrangements made, and I think that that information is public, but it's like Overstock gets the first amount that they invested in, and then some sort of split with Pelion Venture Partners, who's actually managing this financial fund. So Medici is, for all intents and purposes, no more other than this financial fund that kind of sits on Overstock's books. But Ravencoin, since it wasn't a company, isn't a company, didn't fit that model. It's now, the resources have kind of been moved over to the Ravencoin Foundation. So the Ravencoin Foundation has a board that I work with or whatever, and has some funds, both crypto funds and some US dollar funds, and we help some projects that or raise more funds for projects, and also holding the some of the crypto funds that were raised for doing security audits. And so we try to keep the code safe and secure.
Thank you. Okay, so in regards to Ravencoin, we're going to back to Ravencoin. What was your guys' inspiration? I'm assuming you and Bruce Fenton. There was a few others there. I think there was a total of 5, correct, that created the white paper. Who are the other?
Yeah, so there were some other people. I would say the inspiration, came from Bruce. So it was Ravencoin was his idea, or his team. He has a team of people at Chainstone Capital, and so they had kind of the branding, the logo, and in fact, I think they had actually started by hiring some development resources out of Russia that turned out it didn't work out. I'm not exactly sure the full story. It was some car wreck or something that happened. And he was also on the board of either Medici Ventures or of Overstock. And so he had talked to Patrick Byrne, CEO of Overstock. And Patrick said, well, we may have some development resources that could help. And I just happened to get word of it kind of early on. And it happened to fit my skill set. C++ developer, and passionate about crypto, and had actually done stuff with Counterparty, which was the building assets on top of Bitcoin, and worked with Mastercoin and different similar open assets, which is also similar. And so we kind of said, yeah, that's what I want to be involved in, and then and then had some brainstorming sessions over Wings with Joel Waite. We came up with the X16R algorithm, and so that kind of started it. So I kind of wrote up the X16R algorithm, and we said let's kind of swap it out for Bitcoins, and change the logo and all, and basically just kind of began that way. And then get access to, I would say, some of the top developers that were in Overstock/Medici. Mm-hmm. They weren't necessarily C++ developers, so it's a little bit of spin up time.
That's very
required.
That's very rare to find nowadays.
Yeah, it is. Yeah, it's and Overstock was a Java shop, so most of the people had Java, but they were also smart people, right? With architect skills and things like that. So we actually had a really good team, and we basically got our own room within Overstock's building, and sadly, and it was right next to the restaurant area in the building, and which played Christmas music the entire time. I still have a little PTSD from that, but we basically we did the first revision, right? The first revision was basically sort of modifying the block speed, block size, the swapping out the algorithm, changing the ports, things like that. Those were kind of the first steps. We actually did quite a bit of testing on the mining before. So there were a lot of people within Medici kind of helping out doing test mining, on testnet before we launched it. And then we launched it on January 3rd of 2018, but without asset support. So that came later.
Okay. Well, I mean, that was going to be the next question, but it seems like you've already. Are you reading my stuff? I mean, what's going on here? So the next question is going to be, can you give the viewers and listeners that are here for the first time, trying to understand what Ravencoin is all about, give us like a quick synopsis of what Ravencoin represents and what makes it unique compared to other crypto projects?
Yeah, that's a great question. So one of the things that makes it unique, and during the time it was born, if you want to go back in time to kind of that 2017, 2018 timeframe, right? Like, call it second half of 2017, first part of 2018. The big thing during that time was ICOs. People were raising money like crazy. I mean, it was kind of a bull market. People were selling. EOS was doing a thing where they'd sell some every day after doing kind of an initial launch. And people were selling tokens. And Bruce, being a stockbroker and kind of understanding that when you do that, especially if something isn't built yet, then those basically, effectively, if you're giving them, kind of tokens that represent, kind of future, expectation of profit, and you're selling to it, you hit all the Howey test things.
ICOs being the IOUs, right?
Yeah, and so those are securities under securities law, and these things are being tested. A lot of them had to give the money back. Some other ones, right now, I think Ripple's the big one, and Ripple's fighting back, which is great. I mean, I think if the SEC had been kind of, we'll say, playing fair and doing good rules, and everybody had kind of a clear picture and things like that about, what was done, or maybe they forgave the ones, from before because they weren't clear on the rules or something, be in a different spot. But right now,
but they're not.
It just seems.
Yeah.
I mean, you literally try to ask questions like, is Ethereum a security or was it a security, and things like that. And it's kind of, you get dissembling and you get, like different answers. And, there was articles, the Hinman article and things like that, which it disavowed. But anyway, there's a bunch of stuff that kind of happened, and it's still not clear. Just, putting that on the record, it's not clear. So anyway, it's, but back then, so this was 2017, there was a lot of that going on, and it's very, very tempting to raise money. I mean, we had high profile, right? This is coming out of Overstock and things like that. But Bruce was smart enough and understood that this stuff was potentially a security. So we stayed completely away from that. No money was raised. The funds that came were from Medici Ventures that basically paid for the development. So there was no funds raised. And then it was fair launch. So we basically kind of let everybody know at the same time, via Twitter and different things, that you could mine it. You could mine it with a CPU, so anybody could download it, Windows, Linux, or Mac, and start mining on that January 3rd date. And there were a lot of people in Overstock, that could mine it, but there was a lot of people around the world that could mine it all at the same time. And then all the Raven get issued via mining. And so that's, that was the fair launch. So it launched more like Bitcoin than it did like Ethereum, for example, right? Because Ethereum, I'm grateful they did, because I was kind of involved in the early Ethereum as well, and not in a development sense, but in being able to get some. But those Ethereum were put into the first block, and so there was sort of like this pre-mine. The ones that people bought early on were put in the early blocks, and so those were. They weren't all mined into existence. Some of them were kind of purchased into existence. So anyway, so that's one thing that makes it very unique, fair launch. And I think that's super important. just from the nature of the project. The other thing that we added, and the thing that makes it just not a copy of Bitcoin, is the ability to create your own assets. So that we weren't the first ones to do that, right? That was done via Counterparty and some second tier things on different things. But we integrated it very tightly and removed some of the clunkiness that happened in the other projects. And then another one that actually turned out really, really, really well, but I would say it was more like circumstance and happenstance and lucky, was the asset description or metadata is encoded with IPFS links, which makes the IPFS makes the information about each token immutable, right? So it can't change. And that's become really valuable. And one of the things that informed that was on Counterparty, which basically put in like a shortened URL. And so that URL pointed to a website that may or may not be there in 1 year or 2 year or 3 year, now it's gone. Yeah, all you have is a shortened URL and you don't know what it went to. It's just gone, kind of lost to history. And then I think Open Assets did a similar kind of thing. So when I was helped for ANX, I helped build an Explorer, and you try to go get the information from these websites and they'd just be gone, and so you wouldn't know what these tokens were. And then the other thing that makes it unique, sorry, I'm kind of running through lots of them, but the other thing that makes it unique is we have kind of a built-in, almost like a built-in DNS registry type system where you get a unique name. When you create a token, you get a unique name, and the system itself will make sure that name is unique. And that was not easy to build. We had some great developers that helped with that. But it's, so you pick a name, and if the name's already taken, or if two people try to create the same name, and one's in Asia and one's in North America, only one is going to get it, and it gets resolved a lot like a double spend does on Bitcoin, right? One will make it into a block, and the other one will end up having to leave the mempool. So it's whichever one gets in the block first. Which hasn't really been a problem, but we knew it was going to be a problem on day one. So there was a lot of testing and making sure that when everything happened all at once, that it would be able to kind of resolve those. But those the IPFS thing, the unique name thing, and then we also have a couple things that we added for security tokens specifically later.
Perfect. All right. Thank you. That was actually really detailed. I'm reading the comments here from the community. One of them says, "Hey, I got 3 IPFS servers and 3 Raven nodes, and I make NFTs, so I know they're always going to be there."
Awesome.
Yeah, there you go. You just got an awesome from Tron. All right, Tron. In regards to Ravencoin and the SEC, I want to ask you, where does Ravencoin stand in regards to their part of the regulation system regarding the SEC? Is Ravencoin a security or not?
Yeah, Ravencoin is definitely not a security. I mean, we have documents that kind of analyze the various different court cases and things like that that were actually generously done by Doug, who runs Mango Farm. Created a document for us. We needed that actually to get on one of the exchanges early on. To get on Bittrex, they needed that document, and we had raised some funds via crypto, specifically via Raven, to hire an SEC attorney. It's not an easy thing to do because it's not like creating a will. It's more like, hey, if you're doing this wrong, right, then you've got some liability or whatever. But it was clean enough, and so it was generously. This document was generously created. We have it. It's online, and so we're not worried about Raven itself. Now, if you create a token on Ravencoin, your own token, right, and then you sell it to someone with the expectation of profit, and that you have to do something, or the company that that the shares represent have to do something, things like that. You can definitely create securities where the token is, where you're selling it. Basically, a security is an investment contract. So you can actually create an investment contract where the contract is the token, and therefore you could create a security. on Ravencoin. So you got to be careful not to do that. Or if you do it, which I probably should say you don't do that. I should say if you do it, just make sure that you're selling it under one of the exemptions. And the exemptions are Reg D, which you sell to accredited investors, Reg S, meaning you sell to people who aren't in the US or aren't US citizens, or actually both of those. You can't be in the US or can't be a US citizen. You can do Reg CF, which is you can do a project and a broker dealer is the only one who can list it for you on a website. You can't list it yourself. That's actually a really nice one, and they've upped the limits on that. So that's a great one. Reg A, which allows you to go up to 20 million or 50 million, something like that. Reg CF will let you raise up to 5 million now. So the limits have been raised. Those are actually changes recent. The Reg CF, Reg A, all those changes are recent. And by recent, I mean they were told by Congress to do it in 2012, and it took them a long time to do it, but they're done. And so there's these other options that are available. So they're great.
Okay. So just to reiterate, Ravencoin is not a security. Now, the things that you can create with the asset feature, depending on how you market that, those can be considered an ICO per se, correct?
Yeah. So an ICO is these are all terms just so we're clear. Like you can't go like ask the SEC what is an ICO, because it's kind of a made up term that was kind of made up in 2017, right? An initial coin offering, which is probably a really bad term to use because it sounds like initial public offering. But there's also other countries, as long as you stay away from the U.S. If you're outside the U.S. and you're not selling to U.S. people, right? Then you can do a lot of this stuff. You just need to make sure you're kind of staying away from the U.S. because the SEC or I think the FCA in UK. I mean, you have to, whatever your laws are. But if you're in another country and you kind of stay away from those for people that are kind of covered under the FCA or the SEC, then yeah, you're fine. It should be fine. Check with your own laws. This is a global technology. I'm more familiar with the U.S. just because I live here. But yeah.
Perfect. All right, Jake, do you have any questions before I continue in regards to?
I do.
Go ahead.
Go ahead. Questions. I'm up here real quick. Tron, I was really curious about the build of Ravencoin and trying to make it ASIC resistant. When you guys formatted Ravencoin, was China a big player in the ASIC space, and was that the prompt for why you wanted to make it ASIC resistant, or was it just trying to one large player, regardless of what country that happened to be in?
Yeah, so I don't think ASICs are evil, but what tends to happen is if it's only ASICs, meaning the people that buy ASIC is just an application-specific integrated circuit. It's basically a custom box that's designed just to mine. And what happened with Bitcoin is it went through an evolution, right? You could mine on a CPU, and then GPU, and then FPGAs, which are programmable gate arrays, and then ASICs. And ASICs were just so much faster than everything else that if someone had one, you're competing with them for a block, and they might be 10,000 times faster, 100,000 times faster. So if you're still on a GPU or older technology, you're just you'll spend more spend more on electricity than it's worth to mine, and that tends to concentrate the mining into bigger farms, places where they have cheap power, things like that. Ideally, I think ideally, CPU mining is great. The only downside to CPU mining is that it tends to be we'll call it like attackers tend to put like viruses and things like that, because if they can get all the computers mining with the CPU without you knowing about it, it's basically just a bunch of people mining for somebody else, right? And people download a game, but it's really like being paid for by your computer, basically just mining something for them, that kind of thing. Yep. So GPUs seem to be a good sweet spot. We actually started with CPU, which was fine. Then it got to GPUs, which was fine. And then there was an ASIC that came online. It wasn't thousands of times faster just because of the nature of the X16R algorithm, but it was faster. One of our goals was basically to kind of not have ASICs, for the reasons I just talked about. And so we made one tweak, X16RV2, which basically just made a couple changes. And one of the things that does is if someone has an ASIC, it's custom built to do one thing. And so if you change what it needs to do by just a little bit, it kind of obsoletes it because now it's now it's not optimized for doing that one thing anymore. So that slowed them down a little bit. They made some tweaks, firmware tweaks, and things like that. And again, and it slowed them down some. Some of them came back online, and so we switched to an algorithm that was designed specifically for kind of not having ASICs built, which is ProgPow, which is kind of a derivative of EThash, but ProgPow kind of pushed the envelope of the GPU to its limits, like using all of its memory, using all of its shaders or processing power and things like that to mine, and then if you kind of like use up all of a GPU, and for someone to create an ASIC like that they would have to have the memory and the memory bus and those processors and all that kind of stuff built in, and so you could build one, but it would look a lot like a GPU, right? And you'd have to go get 14 nanometer technology, all the same kind of stuff that a GPU manufacturer do. But NVIDIA and AMD have huge purchasing power and huge economies of scale and things like that. So we took ProgPow, tweaked it a little bit, modified it a little bit, made it improved just a couple of things that people had said, hey, this could be a problem. So we just fixed them with the help of the people that are doing ProgPow, which was very generous of them and helpful. And then released it as CawPow. So CawPow is mostly ProgPow with a new name and a few improvements. That's what it runs today, and for the most part, it seems to be working great. GPUs are profitable. It's one of the more profitable coins to mine, and Ethereum I think is still the most profitable, mostly because of its huge recent runs. And if they do move over to proof of stake, there's a good chance we get a lot of those miners back over on Ravencoin, or at least we hope to.
One other question. Thank you for answering that. That's good history of the background of Raven and how it's avoiding ASICs. It's more of a financial question, and it's just of interest because you were involved with Overstock for a while. I don't know if you still are, but how much of Overstock's involvement is in crypto? Is it still just a company that sells other people's stock, that is assets, physical assets, or is Overstock much more heavily, or do you even know, involved in crypto?
Yeah, so I would say it's not involved in crypto very much. I believe you can still pay with crypto, but I'm not 100%, not crypto in general, but I think Bitcoin, but I'm not 100% sure on that. All the investments that Medici Ventures did have been turned into this one financial fund, and someone else is running that fund. So Pelion Venture Partners, which is a venture partner management company here in Salt Lake, is managing that. And so I would say, for the most part, that is on Overstock's books. So they'll get the benefits from the exit events. If T0 is public or gets bought by a big entity or something like that. Overstock would definitely benefit from those, but it's not actively pursuing crypto projects that I'm aware of.
Okay, so it's not. It just happens to be an asset or a function that they have that participate in, but it's not like a core chunk of what they do.
Correct.
Okay.
Correct.
That's just trying to understand. I guess the thing I was trying to understand was it a pet project that became something, Medici project, or is it, was it a partnership at one point, and then Overstock's like, well, we don't really want to do this as a core work where we have, another thing that makes us money. I'm just wondering if there's any tie to that, or if it There's like some.
Yeah, I mean, I don't have really public information on it, but I
Okay.
would definitely characterize it as you know, it was Patrick's passion was crypto.
Okay. So
And, yeah.
would you characterize let's put it into context of something that's happened recently. Would you say that Patrick was Jack Dorsey level crypto fanatic, or
I, I would. I mean, Patrick was very visionary. I think he saw a lot of things actually surprisingly accurately, seeing very, very early. I mean, I think a lot of the lead may have been lost, but I think T0 and what was being done back then, and the ability to kind of see stocks on the blockchain and things like that were, you know, I mean, people talked to him, and he was in that area. He was, you know, doing keynotes back in like 2014. And that's actually where I you know, saw him, was actually in a keynote in Netherlands, talking about this early on. And so yeah, I would say that a lot of it was his visionary, his vision. Yeah.
okay? I was just curious because it seemed like Medici is a fairly. It's not obviously it's just a trust and effect, not actually a practicing entity any longer. But I just wondered if it was spawned out of his interest with the idea of forming it into a practical crypto something company. But it sounds like it's just a holding place now.
Yeah. Yep. Now it is. Yep.
That's all the questions I have.
Perfect. Thank you. Right. Let me move this microphone here. Okay. Tron. So I want to talk about the blockchain, the Ravencoin blockchain. That has been something that I have been keeping an eye on regularly, you know, on and off, I would say a few times per week. And at any given time, you can even go now, at any given time, you can easily see an average of 10 transactions per block. Less than 10 transactions per block. In my opinion, that's a little concerning. I feel like there should be a lot more use case, a lot more transactions being pushed out on the blockchain. I'm not sure if this is something to be concerned about, but I feel that if we have more transactions showing more activity being utilized on the network, it's gonna be more. It's gonna look a lot more better for bigger projects and bigger companies to utilize Ravencoin. They see all this activity, they can dump their liquidity there and start working, building out their projects from there. But when you see something like Ravencoin currently with less than 10 transactions per block, it's more of a hobby coin, if anything, if you ask me. So what are some projects that are, I guess, pushing out more transactions either now or in the near future that's going to bring more, transactions on the blockchain? Because I would like to see it, because I believe that having more transactions will bring more bigger companies into Ravencoin. Because I like Ravencoin. I personally use Ravencoin.
Yeah.
I'm a part of the Ravencoin community. So I want to see more growth happening, more utilization on the network. Now,
Sure.
the first main question I want to ask you is this a concern?
Not having a ton of transactions on the block, not a concern to me. I mean, the important thing would be the value of those transactions. So there's a very vibrant NFT ecosystem growing. If you want to kind of join that or see that, you can go to Ravencoin Foundation, scroll down to the footer, and there's a section for NFTs. And there's 3 different marketplaces. There's people that'll help create NFTs for you. There's people that are creating NFTs, over time. There's marketplaces that you can go to and visit those. Some of them are, kind of bigger ones, like sports figures and things like that, sports memorabilia and stuff that have been up on the Times Square billboards, or screen, things like that. And so there's collections and things like that, which are kind of kind of popular right now. So what we don't want is the capacity of Ravencoin. We increased it to 20x over Bitcoin's capacity. So it has that we'll call it excess capacity. If we start bumping up the limit up against those limits, that will increase the fees. And so we What we don't want is sort of the Ethereum issue, right? Where you've got, crowded, you have to pay $50, to kind of make something happen. I would say, as long as it's working for people and, creating assets and selling stocks and there's wine transaction, whiskey tokens and NFTs, and as long as all that's working well, I think that's okay. And 10 transactions per block is still, 14,000, 15,000 transactions per day, which is pretty good rate.
Nice. Thank you. All right. So one of the biggest developments going on in the Ravencoin community is a P2SH, the pay to script hash feature that you guys are building. You guys have been working on that for a while. Now, I want some clarification here on the podcast that P2SH has been integrated into the Ravencoin core since the beginning. Yes. Correct me if I'm wrong.
Not since So Ravencoin has always had P2SH.
Thank you.
That's pay to script hash, but for Raven only. Right? So
correct.
For Raven, it's been there from day one, right? Because it came over from Bitcoin. What wasn't there was P2SH for assets. So when we built assets, we built it for I think it wasn't pay to script hashes, pub key, pay to pub key, I think. So simple transactions. And the difference is that a pay to script hash transaction can be larger, more complex, handle multi-sig, larger multi-sigs, things like that. Because basically what you're putting on the chain is a hash of the script, of the unlocking script. And that allows you to basically hold the unlocking script, which could be like a 12 of 15 or something like that. And the advantage to doing a 12 of 15 is not that somebody's worried about, I got to have like 15 relatives hold, my keys. It's really more about decentralizing with computers and various networks being able to sign for transactions. So you're having a lot of computers that could sign, and then as long as more than half of those sign, that allows you to do things where you can automate moving assets or locking up assets so that you can mint them on another chain where you can do some other things with them, borrow against them and things like that. And then when you want to transfer them back, you come back and then they're like a federated network of signers can basically sign and move those back, on the Ravencoin chain. So that's kind of its purpose. There's already been using pay to script hash. There's already been the ability to take Raven and then move P Raven, so sort of pegged Raven over onto the Binance Smart Chain. We just want that same capability for assets. And so that's really what the pay to script hash code is about. It's been written, it's been tested, it's gone through an audit by ISE.io, and it's currently in testing. People are testing currently 4.70 something. So if you want to help test, we can definitely use testers.
Perfect. So when is P2SH going to be fully released with asset features?
Yeah, so we'll probably, depending on how the testing goes on the 4.7, we'll probably want to start releasing that code. We'll probably allow the activation of P2SH after the halvening. And then after the halvening, it will count up how many blocks have been mined using the new code. And that's so that we don't get into a weird 50-50 thing. And as long as we hit a certain threshold, it'll probably be like 75 or 80%, then it'll switch over. And then we'll need to do the work to make sure that all the economic players, the Bittrex and Binance and all those guys have upgraded well before that happens.
You said 80%. Do you think that's high enough to really migrate the entire community, or should it be higher? Because I'm thinking that it should be. Say it again?
It's a trade-off. So 100% would be great, but if we don't reach it, it'll probably never activate. All it takes is like one guy mining a block every once in a while to block it, and so it's a trade-off. Here's the thing: we don't have ability to easily communicate with all of the mining pools, right? We don't know who all the mining pools are. For one, they may not speak probably don't speak, the one language that I speak. We have people all over the world, so they can help. But we have limited ability to communicate. I mean, it's a super decentralized project. If this was a, salon or something, you just like flip a switch and it's.
No, that's 100%. This is all like community involvement. Everybody that's watching right now is just supporting me because obviously Blockchain John, like I've been part of this Ravencoin community for a while, so that's why they're hanging out there. They're supporting the community. This is all we're all doing this for the community. You're being on the podcast talking about Ravencoin. It's all for the community. There's people that are gonna watch this probably in about 6 hours that are on the other side of the world that are gonna wake up and appreciate this stuff. Okay, now in regards to the halvening is coming up in about 32 days from now, I believe. It's going to be on January 11th, according to one of the tickers that I checked out earlier today. That's pretty far apart from the original, Genesis block, January 3rd. Is that another concern?
It's only it's actually not set by exactly 4 years. Is one. It's actually 2,100,000 blocks is actually how it's set.
Okay.
So it's not actually set by a date. So it's actually that many minutes is what it's set to. And so whenever that happens, and that's going to be roughly 4 years. So I think it's actually coming in pretty well, tracking pretty well. I mean, that's a week after. Good. A week after the 4 year date. So it's actually that's surprisingly close to me. So that's great. I'm excited for that.
Perfect. Are you gonna troll everybody and just do like a billion Ravencoin and free airdrop to everybody?
Yeah, if we were a centralized project that had kept a whole bunch of Raven for that purpose, then for sure. But the Raven has to come from somewhere because it gets mined into existence for everybody, myself included.
Correct. Yep. All right. I want to take this time right now to talk about the Ravencoin Foundation. Once again, I am part of the Ravencoin community, and I'm always talking with the Ravencoin community, and everybody wants to know what is going on with the Ravencoin Foundation, because the last time there was an update that public update was on May 3rd, 2021. That's about 7 months ago. There hasn't been any updates on the actual website since then. Where can the community, where can we find this information in regards to the monthly meetups that have been going on in regards to the Ravencoin Foundation?
What kind of you meaning like for the board meeting minutes?
Yeah,
is that what you're talking about?
Yep, or the meetings of the minutes? Yeah.
Okay. That's actually just me falling down on that. So I have those. I just need to post them.
Okay.
Yeah. They're not super exciting. They're just us kind of like, hey, is there anything we need to talk about or vote and things like that? There's been a couple of things that we voted on, but we do hold the meeting. We used to hold it about every week, and now we hold it once a month. But there are meeting minutes that I can post.
Who's involved in the Ravencoin Foundation?
I'm the president, and then there's and board member, and Doug from Mango Farms, and the former CTO of Energy Ventures, Jeremy Smith.
Okay, just 3 people. Is that all you need? 3 people?
It is, because there's documents out there we talked about increasing it. But that was if the Ravencoin was going to be modified to take some of the block reward and send funds to it, which we kind of decided not to do. So the funds for the foundation are basically the original funds that Overstock provided, and then the donations for the security audits, and then some donations that are basically had come in from generous donors that are going out for various different things, including some of the bounties that are being offered.
Are these meetings public or private?
They are private. We probably could make them public. I mean, if that's something somebody wanted to go to, I'd have to check if that's something that.
I think, the community would. I'm pretty sure the community would appreciate some public input, or at least know what's going on publicly. So that's why I'm bringing this up in regards to the minutes, because people want to know what's going on, if there's any money being moved around in regards to the foundation, and what projects are being invested into, because nobody knows what's been going on with the foundation for the past months. For all we know, you guys could have burnt up all the Ravencoin that's been donated. Nobody knows.
Oh no, that's all public. That the accounting part of it is completely public. So, and especially because it's blockchain based, if you go to the accounting, you can click on the addresses and see how much is in all of the addresses that are for the various different buckets. So that's all public.
Okay, all right. But would you consider having public meetings? At least just, I mean, you don't have to have, like, for example, you can do a Twitter space, because that's the new thing right now, Twitter space, where you can have just the core board members and just have listeners come in and just listen to what's going on in regards to the board. And on top of that, you can have that all audio recorded if you wanted to, because Twitter Spaces has a built-in recording feature there. That's a thought. Keep that in mind.
Okay. Yeah. Okay.
Recently, November 13th through the 21st, there was an exciting event that happened in the Ravencoin community that very few people were able to participate, because, like me, I have a day job, so I couldn't hang out with you guys. But there was an event, this Ravencoin meetup on the Carnival horizon.
Yep.
There wasn't that much media put out in regards to that, and I really wanted to know what was going on. If you guys were shaking hands with Brian Armstrong and trying to win Coinbase, what's going on? Can you give us a little insight of what happened on the cruise?
Sure, absolutely. So it was the idea of, I think, Pathfinder originally. It's like, hey, we should do a meetup on a cruise ship. I thought it was a fantastic idea. So we basically did that. We just picked a cruise thing and kind of publicized it. I would say it was, so we actually kind of filled up the ship really quick. I don't know if it was filled up from other stuff, but all of a sudden, very quickly, the ship was had limited cabins, which seemed really odd to me. It felt like either I was completely unaware of a ton of people that were signing up, or anyway, I don't know. But all of a sudden, it was to the point where people were trying to get cabins and they couldn't. So anybody who basically contacted me, I talked to the people over at Carnival and we could get a cabin.
How many people are there?
We ended up having quite a few people signed up, and then quite a few people end up having to drop out, and it's because of the rules around vaccines. They require vaccines. And so there's a pretty strong overlap between the crypto community, kind of like, don't tell me what to do kind of thing, and not having vaccines. Mm. So I think I would guess that about half the people ended up dropping for that reason.
Wow.
Which is kind of unfortunate. We had some of those come visit us here in Salt Lake and things like that. So that was nice. But the cruise was great. We had, we held board meeting. We did, for anybody who hasn't already done this, you sign up with BTZPTXN. He actually took some videos from the trip. And so you can see us chatting about Ravencoin and things like that. So just at BTZPTXN. I think he's on YouTube and Twitter.
And for transparency purposes, was the Ravencoin Foundation fund used for the cruise?
Nope.
It was all, everybody's putting in their own money. Okay, cool. How many people participated in the cruise?
Let's see, 12.
12? Wow, that's I thought a cruise was like a large ship.
Oh, it is a large ship. They just weren't all Ravencoin people. Yeah, we didn't get the whole cruise ship.
Oh, okay.
But just while we're here talking about it, we would like to do this again. It was actually really great, and the people that were on the trip got along great. We had a great time. We talked about all kinds of stuff, world life, crypto, and Ravencoin. So we would like to do it again. So we're thinking of doing it at a similar time next year. So if anybody wants to schedule that into their vacation plans, I think it'd be really fun.
Perfect. So we're moving closer and closer to the halving from 5,000 Raven to 2,500 Ravencoin. Can you make any predictions on what's going to be happening with Ravencoin and the crypto markets? Can you? No?
Yeah, I don't know. So a couple things happen. One is, basically it cuts the supply being introduced to the market in half. That'll happen for sure, right? It doesn't matter if more people come in and mine, more people, people drop off because it's not as profitable. Whatever happens, however the mining goes, if there's more miners, fewer miners, there will be half as many supply coming into the market every minute. I don't know how many of the people that are mining, how many people are mining for purely economic reasons. There are miners out there that are just like, hey, this is very profitable. It's great, but I don't like Ethereum, so I'm mining this. And as soon as I get them, I sell them and I get something else or, whatever. Get the cash and, pay off the electricity and then, use the rest of the money to put my kids through school or whatever they do, right? There's some of those. There's other people that are there for more the ethos reasons, right? They're like, I love Ravencoin, I'm mining Ravencoin, I'm holding Ravencoin. I don't know what the ratio is of people holding to basically people selling. For the people selling, that's just selling pressure, meaning all of those Raven that come in 5,000 per minute. If everybody was selling, that's all selling pressure, right? And so that would cut in half. If everybody's holding, then it doesn't make as much difference because it's like, okay, they're just all holding anyway. It's just they're just holding less. So it really does depend on the ratio of people like selling versus people holding, and I don't know what those ratios are.
Okay, here's a question from the community member, Ravencoin community member. They want to ask, and I guess this has been circulating around the community here recently, and they asked if I can ask you the question, what makes Ravencoin different from DAOs?
DAOs. Okay. So that, to me, that's just the question sounds like apples and what's different than apple and oranges, because DAOs are typically smart contracts where this is my understanding of the DAOs. It's a smart contract where people have kind of agreed with whatever the smart contract says, and you're basically depositing money into the smart contract, and the smart contract might pay out based on voting, might pay out based on governance and how you vote and things like that. So it's like a mechanism that has the ability to hold funds or money and then kind of distribute it out based on the kind of the will of the people that have put the money into the smart contract. Raven is an asset creation platform. And so it's kind of a different animal, right? It has the properties of Bitcoin in the sense that it's there's a coin, a token. It has a market, has market volumes. Lots of places you can trade it, you can hold it, and then it also has the ability to create assets or tokens that represent whatever you want them to represent, and whether it's an hour of your time or wine that's not ready to drink yet that can be redeemed later, or a ticket, to a movie or whatever, or an NFT, and the NFTs are really popular right now. So they're really not the same thing. So it's hard for me to answer that question.
Okay, perfect. There is this whale wallet that the community keeps bringing up. Everybody's trying to find out who the person or persons or companies or is, and I'm sure you've heard it. You've heard of it as well.
I have, and my views have changed. So I believe it's an exchange.
Really? Which exchange?
Yep. Person that I talked to about it would knows that they don't really want to know, just because for security reasons.
Okay. Fair. That's fair.
There are some hints that I can post in but like an actual transaction that's sentence and stuff that's that would be helpful. I mean, there's public information available, and I'm willing to post that, but I don't feel like it's my role to say who it is.
Okay, fair enough. Okay, I want to move over to the Asian community in Ravencoin, because they're pretty big and they're very active and they're very passionate. I don't know if you follow them, Tron, but I follow them. I've been since I created the Twitter account. I've been following a lot of folks on the other side of the world, and they are so passionate about Ravencoin. It's wow. I wish that was spread
Great.
out everywhere because they're showing so much love, so much love. The first person that I really had the opportunity to really talk to that was from South Korea was Blockchain Tiger, aka
Yes.
Joshua. That guy is phenomenal. He is so
phenomenal.
inspirational, man. Have you had a chance to really talk to him and see what kind of projects he's working on?
So I have. He's donated quite a bit to the foundation. He's been super supportive of the project. I've gone to lunch with him. I'm happy to help him with anything he needs. He has been amazing. He's traveled to other countries. He's talked to the people that during the Forex markets. Yeah. I'm 100% with you. Totally amazing. Totally incredible. Totally behind him and support what he's doing.
Yeah, I kind of feel like he's the main representative of the Ravencoin community in Asia, because just the way he's so passionate, it reverberates throughout the Asian community. It from my eyes, from my opinion, I see this going on, and everybody that's on the other side of the world in South Korea, they are super passionate about it, and I don't know if it's coming directly from him down to everybody else that follows him. But this is what I see. It just so deep and passionate. For the viewers and listeners out there, if you don't know what I'm talking about, just go follow a few of these Ravenites that are in South Korea or China. Like, they're so passionate. It's crazy. It's crazy.
Yep.
Jake, do you have any more questions for Tron? I'm sure there's been one or two or three that has come up.
I don't know. I think I've gotten everything I mean, it is interesting to talk with Tron again. I like the updates. It's community seems, I wouldn't say it's running itself entirely by itself, but I think the progress that Tron had set out in the white paper has not fully achieved its purpose, but is at least in the process of doing that, and it's good to see that. But no, I don't have any additional questions at this time. But what my original questions have all been answered. Thank you, Tron.
Perfect.
Great.
All
You're
right.
welcome.
All right. Thank you, Tron. We're going to get ready to wrap this up. Jake, if you can, please give us that Ravencoin outro. And this particular Ravencoin outro, and the plug, by the way, this Ravencoin outro is actually the footer of the Ravencoin white paper. And that's how we're going to end this podcast. Thank you, Tron.
Just a second here.
Thank you.
Somewhere
And thank you to everybody that is watching us live in Twitch.
Right. In conclusion, oh, at the very end, sorry, I didn't read that at the bottom. The Inuit, the Tinglet, the Tahitian, the Chukchi, the Sioux, and the Haida, and many others call Raven the magical keeper of secrets, the trickster, friend of the first men and creator of the world, an idea or force able to shift and change and create something from nothing. In open source, the power of the crowd can accomplish much more than any one person or organization. All are welcome to contribute.
With that said, Tron, thank you for being on the podcast
Thank you for having me.
All right, Cryptonauts, with that said, until next time, stack sats and hodl.